everyone.
Hey guys, it's Joe and Matt with VMP's live stream.
Oh, hi Joe.
For those that didn't hear last time, this isn't Tuning Tuesday. Very clearly it's not Tuesday. And this is not Burnout Box. This is just going to be the new stream. We're going to change up who's on the stream some days. It really depends on who's busiest, or if we're tied up with a dyno or tied up with other R&D at the point in time in which we need to do the show.
It's Matt and Joe Wednesday.
Yeah, right now it's Matt and Joe Wednesday. We're going to try and make it to where it's around the same time every week, on the same day every week, but it's just going to kind of fit in where the schedule allows at the end of the day.
You know, Joe, I figured out that spinning is like you got to build up a tolerance. I don't get as dizzy as I used to get.
So, opening conversation, E85 Truths and Myths. What
there are JD,
let's start with myths.
Oh God, there's a lot of them.
The mythos around.
My favorite. I have my favorite. I already told JD.
Fire away.
My favorite, hands down. You need to upgrade all of the fuel lines in your car in order to run E85. Otherwise, it will eat all of the fuel lines in your car.
So we have to preface that with, if you have
a modern day vehicle.
If you have an older car that has straight rubber lines, what, 30s
Yeah.
Model T.
Yeah, if you have Advanced Auto Parts 3/8 fuel line running from the barb fitting on the pump in the back to the carburetor in the front, you're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
If you have anything built after, like, I don't know, 85,
you'll probably be okay then.
You're gonna be fine.
Unless someone did a carburetor swap on your 87 hatch and ran a 3/8 rubber fuel line from the front of the car to the back of the car.
Point being, if you have a modern day factory EFI vehicle, it's going to have plastic lines. It's going to more than likely have a plastic tank, or at least coated. It's going to have stainless steel metal lines, or at least galvanized. You're not going to have a problem. You can do it. I was just arguing with someone on the SVT Focus forums about this.
If you're watching this stream, chances are you're not part of that demographic.
Correct. So that's my favorite.
Just based on our analytics.
That's my favorite one, because it just seems like every Facebook group I'm in, like I said, I just had this conversation with an SVT Focus group where someone said, what do I need to run E85 in my SVT Focus? Like, second comment down, you need to change all of the fuel lines in the car because it'll eat all of the fuel lines. And I'm like, bruh.
Well,
pulls up chair, shuffles note cards.
Other myths. So
That was
you
my
have
always
to
favorite.
change your oil every 1,000 miles because E85 puts water in the oil and it dilutes it, and your oil is going to go bad.
And there's another one where this is something that has...
That's a myth, by the way. Just
yes, that is a myth, but this is another one that, the first one we mentioned, where there is a very slight amount of truth that got blown way out of proportion.
Yeah.
E85 does add a tremendous amount of moisture to the crankcase. That being said, if you have a vehicle that you drive and it gets to operating temperature and the oil gets to operating temperature, it's going to cook that moisture out.
Yeah.
So this is only a problem if you have race cars that get start and shut off. They don't get warm. The oil temp doesn't get hot enough. You have a 3-minute
Or it's a
commute.
dry decked head. And
Or you just have
you
like
run
a
it
3-minute commute to work and it never really gets warmed up.
Even then, most modern cars have...
It takes a while to get oil temp. Or you live in like Canada.
Okay, yeah.
And it's freezing outside. So long story short is you do want to change it more often. You don't want to do 10,000 miles.
Yeah.
But you don't have to change it every 1,000 miles.
Yeah, or every month or every
We usually
2
tell
months.
people in the 3 to 5 range. Have it tested if you're really worried about it. And they'll tell you if it's thinned out or diluted.
Yeah.
And then you're good to go.
Send it.
What's your other favorite myths? That's my favorite. Or I'm sorry, I said my favorite. You said yours. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, I'm just trying to pick which one fits what most of our people usually ask us.
Storage is the other big one. About if you store it, it goes bad in 1 month. And
yeah, so if you're going to store E85, or for me, any fuel,
right,
make sure it's sealed.
Right.
or sealed, as the kids on the internet say these days.
Sealed.
Sealed.
Stock sealed.
Exactly. SBE. Yeah, so just make sure that if you're storing it in a 55-gallon drum, that you tighten the threaded cap all the way down and that the vent cap's also plugged, and try and store it in an area where the temperature does not change a lot, and preferably I think it's under 80 degrees Fahrenheit is where you want to store
Now,
it.
what about when it's in the fuel tank? Because that's the other one. People say, oh, well, the car sits a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's that one.
So fuel tanks are also sealed. So from that standpoint, just try and keep it in an environment where if you can avoid it, the temperature doesn't change a whole lot, like in a garage that, I don't know, isn't out in Arizona and just boiling one part of the day, freezing another
Yes.
part of the day.
It's 120 during the day and 40 at night.
Yeah, exactly. All right, store your fuel in the ground in a container.
Will it go bad sitting in the tank? Yes, it will.
Mm-hmm. Just like most fuels.
Just like most fuels.
Mm-hmm.
I have generally told people try and use that tank up every couple months.
Mm-hmm.
If it's going to store longer than that, put some of that green E85 Lucas stabilizer in it, or just switch over to pump gas.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be stored for a really long time, fill it up with ethanol free. But it doesn't run very good on that.
No, most cars that are running E85 won't even run on 87 properly. How to blow up your car when you pull it out from winter storage.
Yeah.
Go beat on it with the tank of 87 still in it.
And then I think
Move to truths.
I would say that's a lot of myths.
Truths.
We've covered the major myths.
Yeah,
There's a lot
exactly.
of other ones, but I got one more myth.
All right, fire.
It's only 100 octane. That's my favorite.
So there's more to a fuel's ability to support horsepower than octane.
Correct. There and was it R2 plus M2 or R2M or
Well,
whatever the
that'd be
hell it is?
RON plus MON equals the AKI
Correct.
rating.
Which is what we use.
Yeah, that's AKI.
That is only part of a fuel's overall detonation resistance.
Yeah.
So yes, it technically has an octane of 100.
Or 105 in some cases,
think
but
it's-
like
But
that's
that is
only
not
part of the picture. That's the
That's
part we
correct.
focus on the most because that's the one that's most easy to relate to standard pump gasoline fuels, because that's what standard pump gasoline fuels are rated with, is just an AKI RON plus MON rating, and that's the easiest one to talk to people about, octane, not the latent heat of evaporation and all that stuff. So
in reality, it's rated at 100 to 105, depending on what pump you get it from. That being said,
or what it's mixed
that
with.
does not mean that it performs like an MS-109 that has a similar octane point. It is far superior in every way due to evaporation, heat, its ability to pull heat out of the combustion chamber and things like that. It actually behaves above a 116 if you really want to get technical.
Yeah, depending on which 116 you're talking about, but yeah.
So that's my other favorite one, is they say, oh, it's only 100 octane, it doesn't do anything.
And then another truth, or a truth, because we were myths and then we threw in the truth about it type of thing. So along the lines of truth, you do need 30% more fuel, roughly, depending on your ethanol content.
That is true.
You need 30% more fuel. So if you don't already have an idea of what your car is doing from a fueling standpoint or how much room you have left on the table, reach out to a tuner, your tuner, us, and we can tell you if the setup would tolerate switching to E85 or not, just based on the combination of parts that you're using and how much boost you're running and stuff like that. So yeah, you do need more fuel.
You definitely need approximately 30% more fuel. It's a numbers game, really. Stoic point of the fuel, stoichiometric point of the fuel, means that how many atoms of oxygen this atom of gasoline needs to
completely burn all the oxygen.
burn. So of course gasoline is 14.7 to 1.
And then E10
is 1408.
Yeah.
So E10, just because it has 10%, it is now dropped down to 1408. So it needs a little bit more fuel for that amount of oxygen.
Yes.
E85 stoic point is 9.85. So right there, you need approximately 30% more fuel molecules to make, or I'm sorry, oxygen to, or you get what I'm saying? Sorry, I said that wrong.
Ratio.
Yes, your fuel to oxygen ratio needs about approximately 30% more.
Yeah.
So it's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
That's why if you were to put the car on methanol,
Mm-hmm.
I believe Stoic on methanol is like 4.5 or 5 to 1, something
I
like
think
that.
it's around 5, but yeah.
I want to say it's like 4.5 or 5 to 1.
Mhm.
So you need
You need a tremendous amount of fuel.
significantly more.
Yep.
So that's why you go straight to Moran 500-pound atomizers.
God. Along those same lines, we offer flex fuel tunes for a lot of different platforms, but we also get questions about a company that makes a flex fuel.
Piggyback system.
Yeah, it's like a module piggyback ethanol content analyzer. Yeah.
Staring straight into the abyss of the camera.
Don't say anything, pal. We're back, boys.
Yay!
Okay, I see
The
us on
boys are
Facebook
back in
moving.
town.
Okay. I'll go back to the sheet here. All right, so the ProFlex, I think that's what it's called.
Correct.
Piggyback ethanol flex fuel awesomeness.
It works.
Yeah, it seems to work. They say some things I don't agree with in the sense that they talk about how you don't have to make any other changes to see power gains. If a car has knock sensors, that's possibly true.
Yes.
If a car doesn't have knock sensors, then you're just adding in a lot of safety net.
Yeah.
By adding the octane but not adding timing. And to me, if I was going to spend $800 to $1,000 on a piggyback module to run E85 in a car, I would want to advance the timing.
Yeah. For sure.
Just to try and make something with that increased ethanol. There are, kind of like we referred to before, there are some advantages to running E85 from just what the fuel in and of itself does standpoint alone.
Yeah.
But to really take full advantage of that stuff, you really should get a tune update to run E85 because you can't bank on the knock sensors adding the timing in or adding in enough timing to really gain you a whole lot. But let's say you have false knock on the car and you're not looking at data logs because you think that the E85 Flex kit is just going to work for you, and you're potentially leaving 30, 40 horsepower on the table because you have false knock and you don't know about it, that you would find out if you had a competent tuner that, hey, you have false knock, or B, that you're just not adding enough timing in, especially down low, because knock sensors take time to add in timing, at least if we're talking Ford's knock control strategy, where it only adds in a certain amount of degrees of timing per second.
Which is, of course, adjustable, but rarely do you want to be super aggressive with that to where it's adding in,
5 degrees per second.
5 degrees per, exactly, 5 degrees per second kind of situation.
Yeah.
You want it to be a slow, gradual add-in.
Yeah, but you would rather be starting off at a higher value to begin with before it starts adding.
Right.
And that's where the tuning side of things comes in. So along those lines, I think that a flex fuel tune is better value for a lot of late model Ford guys than that module is. That's not to say the module doesn't work or doesn't have a place on the market.
Correct.
But
because again, the flex fuel tune will add or subtract timing as well.
Yeah, so for vehicles that we will write flex fuel tunes for, to me the tune file itself or a straight E85 tune makes more sense than some of those modules. But those modules definitely serve a good purpose for cars out there that maybe tuning isn't as readily available or as inexpensive for.
Yeah, you did one on that Corvette not too long ago, and it seemed like it worked well.
Yeah, I didn't even do that. I just dynoed it for Grassroots.
That's who it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was Grassroots Motorsports.
C5.
They did a C5Z with one of those kits, and it picked up decent power as you would expect with a car with knock sensors with E85. He could have picked up more power being tuned for E85.
Yeah,
but
naturally.
It did help.
It does help.
But it does help. And I do not recommend trying to mix a flex fuel tune with one of those modules.
Ooh, God.
That'd be a nightmare.
Oh yeah, don't do that.
It would. I can only imagine it would run. It would run pump gas timing, because the second the sensor starts to sense the fuel coming in, it's automatically going to trim fuel based on injector pulse width for everything, and you're going to
Yeah.
It's not going to effectively learn the story,
right, because
the other module is learning it for it.
so it would learn the 30% added. The factory ECU would learn the 30% added, but then the piggyback would see the content and add another 30%. So then the computer would think that it had 30% too much, and it would pull that back out.
I'm thinking the computer would never learn it because the ethanol content sensor that's in line would make it there before it's ever injected.
Correct. That's what I was getting at. Is it's a circle because basically the commander, the piggyback adding 30% is going to turn around and make the computer pull that back out. So then the computer is going to think it's back on pump gas again.
Yeah. So then you're in it's a circle. But yeah, there's lots of other stuff we could talk about on E85 Truths and Myths, but I think that covers the primary stuff, the what we deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the winter mix. We should probably hit on that one.
Yeah.
The winter mix, it does happen. It is a thing. We're pretty fortunate here in Florida. Very, very rarely do we see anything below 85%.
Yeah, and even then it's usually still above 70%
Yes.
ethanol. But in other states, you will see E50s, E60s.
Correct.
And it's
You do need to watch that because if you're running a heavily boosted car that's tuned for E85, which is 85%,
exactly.
and all of a sudden you throw 50% in it, you're gonna have a bad day.
It's gonna be
Generally 70.
It's gonna be rich, but it's not gonna
have enough octane resistance
Yeah.
or detonation resistance.
And I mean, the detonation resistance is largely the same, or I shouldn't say detonation resistance. We're interchanging detonation resistance and octane here. The octane of an ethanol blended fuel is relatively similar at like 54% ethanol all the way up to 85.
Correct.
But if you were running a high boost setup that's run like on the edge of the knife,
Yes.
you want to make sure you're closer to that 85% than you are that 54%.
Correct.
Or at least I would, because the stuff that they're mixing in with that 50% ethanol isn't high octane stuff. So if half of your fuel is kind of the runoff
Yeah.
of the standard 87 and you're mixing it with ethanol,
The 83
You're
that they
getting,
found
like-
in the drain in the floors.
exactly. That's where I get a bit more like, yeah, you might want to make sure your ethanol content's on point. So
Correct. So
in terms
basically,
of-
if you're not in the state of Florida and it gets into the winter months, and honestly, if you're going to religiously use it and you have an aggressive stock motor situation, or aggressive boost, whatever, you should check it
yeah.
every once in a while.
So how do you check it?
Well, there's two ways.
Yep.
Actually, there's a couple ways, but the two main ways are the manually check it via the little glass tube with the sight on the side. Works great. We do it here.
Don't use softened water
No, don't use
because
that.
you have to pour in a certain amount of water.
I
with
use
it.
water straight out like a bottle of water.
Yeah, I
have
like
found
a
the best.
room temperature bottle of water.
Correct.
Seems to work the best.
So you have your little glass test tube, and it uses basic chemistry to separate the alcohol out from the gasoline, and you can see the content. That's what a lot of people use.
Yeah.
If you are lazy and you
Don't use Dasani.
well, yeah. God, it's terrible stuff. Sorry, I'm gonna get sued by Dasani now, but let's face it, it is terrible water.
Yeah.
That being said, if you're lazy and you don't want to check it in the tube and you don't want to have to pour the water in there and all that stuff, they make
got
actual
a little money burning hole in your pocket.
right. And they do make content analyzers. That is a standalone gauge. Innovate makes a great one.
Usually with a
And
GM flex fuel sensor.
Usually uses a GM flex fuel sensor, and it will tell you in real time what your alcohol content is on a gauge.
So the only thing to be weary of with that is that when you use those, and I guess this could even give you a false reading on a test tube in a certain way, if you have moisture in the fuel, being water, it skews the value you get on a flex fuel sensor because I want to say they're measuring conductivity of the fuel,
I believe
something like that.
so.
I forget what the process is for determining ethanol content when it's run through a sensor, but I want to say it's something with its conductivity, and that changes just like it does with ethanol with water.
Yeah.
So that's just something to be mindful of. If you ever get a bad tank of fuel and it has some water in it, it may inaccurately say that it's got some ethanol content to it, because it's not actually analyzing the content of the fuel in real time like you would do in a lab.
Right.
It's just measuring one of the variables that usually changes when you swap to an ethanol-based fuel.
Sorry,
But-
it's getting warm in here. Brian's in here. You know how that is.
Oh yeah, he's so warm. All right, so I think I'm going to touch on
That's
a
the
couple.
crash course on E85.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to touch on a couple of the questions, and then we'll hop back over to.
I am pasting in the doc too, if that's easy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you're doing that, I'll hop over.
Oh wow,
here.
he did paste. Wow, sorry.
No, you're all good. I'm trying to
Enhance.
get it working.
Enhance.
Jeff Scarland, glad you guys are back. I think a lot of people think E85 is going to be like methanol instead of ethanol. That is true as well.
Yeah.
They're not the same. They don't chemically work the same.
No.
So keep that in mind.
We have Matt Collette. I can't tell. That's an O.
That's an O.
Okay, so Oulet.
Oulette.
13 GT500 full bolt-on, 715 wheel horsepower. Any more left in the factory TVS? If there is, should I run octane boost at this point? I ran out of fuel in my last dyno pull. I guess I need boosters at least.
Wow, that's pretty good on a factory TVS.
It is. Yeah, I would say definitely put boosters in it if you're running out of fuel, because I say that because I'm assuming that you mean that you're running out of fuel volume from a feeding from the pump standpoint, not on an injector duty cycle standpoint, which the two will kind of go hand in hand, because when you start losing pressure, because your factory fuel pumps don't have boosters and they're not outputting enough volume, your pressure will start to drop, which then makes the injectors peg. But if your fuel pressure is not dropping but the injectors are pegging, then that's a different issue. Then you got to put injectors in it. But I assume if you're already leading into, do I need boosters? It probably means you do need boosters. At that wheel horsepower, I would already have had boosters on the car. And in terms of octane and stuff, I would probably be running octane booster, even in small dilutions at that level. But if you want to push it harder without going to a race fuel or E85, you will need to run either an octane booster or you will need to go to a race fuel. One of those two will need to happen.
If there was a question in your response to Matt, he said yes. I don't know if you said a question there, he just said yes.
For Matt?
For Matt Olet.
Okay, so maybe
Oh,
it was
oh,
for
oh.
the name pronunciation or something.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, I would try and get some more octane in that thing if you're looking to turn it up anymore, and a set of boosters would not be a bad idea for getting your fuel pressure back up. You got this one, Matt.
My GT92 Cobra 1. Good afternoon. I am torn between a Gen 3 and a Gen 3R. Stock bottom end 5.4, looking for something to get to 800 horsepower easily with full bolt-on and boosting. How much horsepower does the Gen 3R make versus the Gen 3, Joe? I don't think
I wouldn't be trying to make 800 wheel in a GT500 on boostane.
Yeah.
Have we done it before? Yeah, but that isn't something I'd try to do on a regular basis. I would really
Buy
prefer to
another
see
short
an
block.
85.
Do my theory.
Yeah.
Buy another short block and just set it in the garage next to your car.
Yeah, just keep it on notice.
Just keep it on notice.
Yeah, the 800 wheel level on a GT500 is already kind of like gambling on a stock short block,
Right.
let alone trying to get away with that on boostane. I'd usually only recommend something like that for E85 or race fuels. In terms of Gen 3R versus Gen 3,
Both are going to do it.
at that level, at what we'll call the 800 horsepower level, Gen 3 versus Gen 3R is probably 15, 20 horsepower tops.
Yeah.
If you're closer to that 1,000, 1,100, that's where it makes a lot more of a difference at pressure ratios like that. Tim and Joanna Wilson. What about injectors? I had the oil pump gears break on my 17 GT and couldn't run the E85 out of the fuel system. Should they be cleaned? If so, who would you recommend?
I believe, well, it depends on where your injectors are from, because I believe if you have FICs or IDs, you can send them back and they'll clean them, I think.
Yeah, ID will clean injectors. It's just not free.
Yeah, oh no,
And
of course
same
not.
with FIC. So
The other person who I use and a lot of people use is Boost Lab
yeah,
over in Tampa. Yeah,
Yeah.
Boost Lab, they've always cleaned my injectors.
Mhm.
Even when I had the shop, Kirk and Ryan over there have always done my injectors for me in the shop.
Mhm.
Never had a problem. They give you back a sheet, shows before and after, all the good things.
And I had a
So-
customer do send theirs back to ID after a fuel oil pressure sensor popped, and one of the injectors right below the fuel oil pressure sensor got little pieces of metal and some pieces of like silicone
Yeah.
diaphragm pushed into it.
So that's possible. So he's talking about with the E85 sitting, and because the car has been broken, will that gum up injectors? Absolutely.
Yeah,
Depending
it
on how long it's
can.
been sitting.
And I would
So-
say that it's just good due diligence on a new motor to
Yeah,
just
for
clean the
sure.
injectors if you're even a little bit concerned about whether or not they got gelled
And
up.
they're cheap. I don't want to quote them, but I want to say that it's like $200 a set or $250 a set, something like
ID's
that.
quite a bit more. I think it was $350 to $400 when my buddy sent his
Yeah,
injectors
maybe,
out. But
and again, Kurt might kill me because I don't remember off the top of my head. Either way, the point is it's not all that bad.
yeah,
To
we're
just-
not here to quote prices.
Yeah.
We're just you asked us a question, we're answering.
I'm
it, so.
saying that they're reasonably priced. They will do a really good job of cleaning them. It's a very good idea to have them cleaned depending on how long it's been sitting. If it's only been sitting a couple weeks, I'm sure you're fine.
Yeah,
It
if
wouldn't
it's
be
been
a-
sitting like a year or two apart and the
Yeah.
injectors are just kind of chilling open.
Or if
somewhere.
the injectors, or if you have driven a lot of, if you've put 30,000 miles worth of E85 on those injectors, it might not
They
be a bad
probably
idea
have
to
a
clean
little
it
bit of
anyway.
junk in them.
Yeah, so that's kind of thing is I would get them cleaned, yes.
Yeah. And then we have Shelby VF103. Hello, guys. Hello, Shelby. I don't know if that's your name, but I'm going to call you that.
Root beer.
Root beer. Do you guys think adjustable lower control arms are worth it for roll center correction on a lowered car, or is the offset so low it's not worth the expense or trouble? So
Ooh.
it depends on what you're doing with a control arm mount. So like people make drop mounts and adjustable brackets to where you can change which height the control arms are at.
Which is
But-
pretty imperative on a 3-link car.
Yeah.
Because
But-
as you lower the car, you're changing the bar angle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty important that you keep that factory or close
Yeah,
to it.
but I don't know a tremendous amount about suspension, but I don't think you'd be affecting roll center there.
No, that's the thing. Well, that's what I was getting at. Is not
Mhm.
really roll center, but I do know that if you lower the car, it's important to also lower the mount
Mm-hmm.
so that the bar angle stays factory. Otherwise, the car, you actually will destroy the traction, especially on an S187.
Yeah.
If you want to ruin the traction or the grip on an S187, lower it 2 inches and leave the factory control arms.
Mhm. So it's like this.
Yeah, God, that thing won't hook ever again.
No,
So that's why like places like BMR and UPR make the lower control arm relocation brackets that have the 3 holes in them. That's exactly what that's for.
Yeah.
As far as roll center, I'm not a big, I'm not a suspect. I know just enough to keep me dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't help you on that one. I'm sorry.
We got Zachary Cordry. So should I definitely get tuned on boosting? Don't want to leave power on the table. Depends on the setup of the car, but I'd say that getting a tune update for boosting isn't a bad idea if you're looking to gain power. You can run boosting without a tune update if you're just looking to add a little bit of safety. And if your cars have knock sensors, depending on what's done in the tune, they can add a bit of timing based on that. Rick Singer. I have an 09 GT500 Gen 3R, Ford Racing Twin 65, 2.8 pulley, off-road H-pipe, AFCO triple, JLT 123. Your tune. I keep having to replace my IT2 sensor. Went through 3.
Ooh,
Pump's working fine. Any thoughts? That's an odd one. The
that's weird.
IT2
Are they
sensor.
melting?
Yeah, I'd probably check to make sure that your intercooler system's burp properly. I've never seen anything other than IET temps or oil contamination tearing up IET2 sensors, other than just like physical damage. And that's usually a pretty robust sensor. I think I've only changed one IET2 sensor on a GT500, and that's because the customer managed to break it, and not through anything mechanically other than just he was messing around by the connector with a pry bar or something and it broke the sensor.
Yeah.
Craig Hall, E85 absorbs the water, and what it doesn't absorb gives you your percentage.
There you go. Well, he's talking about
Yeah.
testing in it too.
Oh, yeah.
Chemistry.
Chemist. Science.
Science. I was just gonna say Breaking Bad. Science. Yay, science.
So I'm going to hop over to Facebook real quick. Or are some of these questions from
They're
Facebook?
from both.
Okay.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, these are just the questions.
Brandon Cormier ordered a boost pump from VMP. He's my customer. Ordered a boost pump from VMP. When I install it, how critical it is to data log, ASCP for. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
A booster pump does not change a whole lot on one of those. Do I need to make adjustments? Yes, but it's not that.
Yeah,
big
and I mean,
deal.
if you're savvy with looking at logs on an 18 up setup, your fuel pressure at idle is probably going to be in the range of 55 to 65 without a booster. when you put a booster in, it usually bumps up to like 75 to 82 psi at idle.
Yeah.
So to be able to determine whether or not the booster is working, that's usually a pretty good index of what's going on, is what the pressure it's running at idle is.
And my wife Amber is watching. She says, no question, just hi.
Hi,
honey.
Amber.
Hi, honey.
SC302 VY Canis Majoris. What are your thoughts on coilovers on the street? I took your suggestion and got the adjustable perches on the rear, but I'd like to adjust the front as well. 13 Boss 302. I have mixed feelings about coilovers on the street just because I'm real picky about how a car sounds as it's going down the road. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the coilovers I have experience with in the new edge world make noise and rattle, and it's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. In reference to a 13 Boss 302, you can run coilovers on it. Based on my experience alone, I'd say you have to kind of be okay with a little bit of noise coming from the coilovers. If you're okay with that, then sure, put a set of coilovers on the front if you're wanting to adjust the height a bit. If it was me, I'd just stick with a good quality strut like Bilstein or Factory or Ford Performance. And
Tokikos.
I'd put a good set of springs on it like H&R or Eibach or someone of that level.
We got to do group buy on H&Rs for the Focuses, Joe.
Yeah, we do. Colorsmatic. For supercharged applications, is it okay? Is it normal or okay for long-term fuel trims to fluctuate between 3 and 20% positive? Is FT? So didn't this guy ask this question last week?
I don't know if it was him.
I don't think so.
I don't think it was.
Okay,
We
so
got
it's
asked
another
a
guy
similar
asking
question,
the same question.
and the numbers were different because the other guy did not say between 3 and 20.
Okay, so it depends on what conditions your long-term fuel trims are floating between 3 and 20.
Is that
If they're adding 20 at wide open throttle, that's a problem. If they're
Yeah.
adding 3% at wide open throttle, I wouldn't worry about it.
that
If
being
it's-
said? 20 is a bit.
It's a bit on the higher
It's a
side,
bit
but
on
to
the
me,
higher
if
side.
it's plus 20 but pulling 18
Correct.
on short term, then that's just a bad long term for that condition. And
Because
I
they
wouldn't
will
worry
do
about it.
that. I
Yeah,
don't know how many times you get a data log where it's adding 18% and then pulling 18%. And I'm like, really?
yeah.
Come on.
It's like, guys, we can't just like work together on this.
Right. Don't you
Um,
guys talk? I don't understand.
We got Jeff Scarland. Is adding fuel pump voltage boosters to aftermarket return style fuel systems a common thing, or just getting a higher capacity system the answer? I would personally rather put a higher flowing fuel pump in than run a booster on a return style system. Why is that, Joe? Okay, Matt.
I'm glad you
Yeah,
asked.
I'm glad you asked. So,
The goat asked.
yeah, you just have to be able to understand the screams. So with an aftermarket return fuel system, a lot of times the pumps are wired key on or factory triggered on full voltage at all times. I don't know that I would consistently try to run a pump at 18 to 20 volts at all times.
Yeah,
And-
that's a bit much.
When we're dealing with the factory returnless systems, we're only increasing the input voltage to 18 volts, and then the fuel pump driver module regulates it after the fuel pump driver module, so that a lot of the times it's not really running 18 volts at the pump with a booster when we're talking factory returnless stuff, like example say GT500. A lot of GT500s will only run 3 or 4 volts at the pump at idle. And then when you're actually wide open throttle going watt, you'll see them go
Loud noises.
11 to 14 volts at wide open throttle. And although that value's kind of, in a way, skewed
Yeah.
because of the voltage booster, my point behind saying that is it's not seeing constant power at all times. With a return style system, it's constantly running at battery voltage when you don't have a booster, and then when you put a booster on, it's constantly running at 18 volts. And I don't know, pumps last longer when you're not constantly running them at 18 to 20 volts.
Yeah, it's an
And-
electric motor.
Exactly.
Spin it twice as fast, it lasts half as long.
If it was like, yeah, if it was like a two-stage setup where it was like low-high, kind of like the factory Coyote stuff is, I'd feel more comfortable with running boosters
It
on
just
it.
puts a lot of heat in the fuel too. I mean, I know
Yeah.
that's not really a thing, but at the same time, it's just you don't.
Well, and for a return fuel system, when you're idle part throttle cruise, you don't need a tremendous
Right.
amount of volume to maintain that. Hell, you get cars with 100 liter per hour pumps that maintain idle part throttle
Yeah.
cruise just fine.
Yeah, we're not saying this won't work. We're
Yeah.
saying that there's better ways to do it.
Yeah, and to me, the better way is just to replace the pumps. And a lot of times, putting 2 bigger pumps in is cheaper than buying 2 boosters by a pretty significant margin.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
Tim and Jonah Wilson, again, thanks for the advice. I will send them off and have them cleaned. The car's been sitting since August. Yes, you should definitely clean them.
Mm-hmm.
Dude said race season in Alaska is very short.
It's like 3 days.
That's why I was like, wow.
Yeah.
He talking about bobsled racing, right? Toboggan racing and stuff. That's all they do up there. How many Huskies you own?
Don't lie.
Don't lie either.
Husky pressures.
All right, so
Yeah, how many Husky pressures you
answered-
got?
we've answered quite a few questions. We're gonna hop over to the
Next bullet point.
next bullet point. Personal projects. What are you building? What are your goals, Matt and Joe? Matt, you go first.
My
You're
personal
building
project.
too much shit.
My personal project has been making SVT focuses great again.
What about your secret project?
It's
Or is
still
it still secret?
it's still secret.
Okay.
So it's still sitting. But yeah, I've been making SVT focuses great again. So I picked up my little yellow one that you guys might have seen that JD fixed the bumper on. And then, so I put brand new drilled and slotted rotors on it with some nice pads. Made a world of difference. Put some rear wheel bearings on it because the wheel bearings are
brake
bad.
fluid yet?
I have not done the brake fluid because, hear me out, one of the brake lines is looking a little questionable.
Okay.
So
you're gonna do some stainless braided.
like the
fluid at the same time?
outer rubber has got a decent split in it, and I can see the nylon cording underneath it. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to put brake lines on it. So I'm just gonna wait on the brake fluid.
Mhm.
I had to put wheel bearings in it because, like I said, they come from the factory with bad wheel bearings, I think. Started putting the radio in it, which is a whole hell of a. I think I wired more on the radio than I did my entire car back in the day, race car, because there's steering wheel controls and speed
5
volume,
volt line outputs.
5-volt line outputs, and speed volume controls, and subwoofer outputs, and all that has to get converted to work with the aftermarket deck unit. So I was working on that, and it's illegal to say the other thing that I did, and but I had to. We'll just say I had to order parts from England because they don't make them here in the States anymore, and then that's about it. That's what I've been working on, is making Pac-Man great again.
Oh yeah.
And then what you've been doing thermostat housings on yours.
You've
Or
tried to get
attempting
parts of
to.
thermostat housings. Yeah, it's been a saga getting all the parts for my 1 week since you looked at me. It's been quite the saga getting all the parts for my thermostat housing for my Focus, because that died on my way to work as I was pulling in the parking lot one day.
Well, we made the joke because we both got SVT focuses
both.
the same weekend.
And we're like, we both got to get these.
Yes.
We got a timing belt swapped.
Yep.
And we got to get the cooling crossover / thermostat housing.
Well,
thing
it's an
swapped out.
ongoing thing that those cars, they're very, very good cars.
Mhm.
They just have this relatively short list of things
Mhm.
that
As with most
always go bad. Always. And
Mhm.
between your car, so between the two cars,
Mhm.
everything on that list has gone bad.
Yep.
So, like, they always have wheel bearings go bad, and I took care of that for you.
Yep.
The thermostat housings always crack. You took care of that one.
Yep.
The timing belts always need replaced.
Yep.
Like, they need replaced 2 days after you put them on.
Yep.
And then I had the, God, what was it that I had to fix? Oh, the evaporator core.
Mhm.
So I did that in mine.
Mhm.
Yours has been okay so far. And
Yeah.
the IMRC motor. The IMRC motor
Mine's been
always.
good.
See, yours has been good. Mine went bad, so I had to take the IMRC motor apart and clean the contacts and solder it all back together again.
Mhm.
So between the two of us, we've got it all covered.
Yep. And then I've got the Escort that the same weekend. So like
And
the
I've been looking for
Focus
one.
thermostat housing went bad on a Monday. The Escort thermostat housing went bad on the Sunday following that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Ashley was driving home, or not Sunday, it would have been a Saturday. Ashley was driving home from work and she calls me and she's like, Bub.
There's
help."
nothing more frustrating than when you own like 4 vehicles and none of them work. Like they're all down. And it always
Yeah.
seems like they're all down at the same time.
I have my 2 trusties. My Vic and my F-150 are my 2 trusties, but I got those 2 for like the daily beaters, and they're doing daily beater stuff. So
Well, I remember you had the truck, the Vic, and then the Mustang,
Mhm.
and then it was like the Vic had a bad alternator,
Yeah.
and the Mustang had something going on at the same time. I remember you had like 4 vehicles, and I think you still had the Cobra at that point in time, or one of the
The
Mustangs.
97. Yeah.
You had the 97. It was like you had 4 vehicles, and not a single damn one of them was working other than the truck.
Yep. Truck has been good old trusty. Which, speaking of,
Which is ironic
projects-
because that's the most modified.
Yep. Yep. But speaking of projects, the truck is also on my list. I'm rebuilding a jet ski right now, working on another jet ski, and I don't know, I got a lot of stuff going on, same as you do.
Always.
Tuning videos. So we've been doing a lot of videos for you guys lately, and we'll be doing more videos on tuning related stuff. We did a order form video. The guy that's operating the computer, or one of the computers behind the camera here, got you guys hooked up with that. That's JD. He's waving for you guys. Him, Michelle, and Brian put together a data logging video.
Yep.
And then JD, Matt, and Brian put together a narrowband tuning video and basically how to set up a narrowband wideband sensor in a car that's previously narrowband.
Correct.
Or concurrently narrowband.
Which we call the narrowband kit, and it drives me nuts. But I understand
Yeah.
why we call it a narrowband kit.
We call it a narrowband.
It drives me nuts that you buy a wideband and you call it the narrowband kit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the kit for narrowband cars
Correct.
to go wideband.
So we have videos on how to do all of that. So
And then we have diagrams for how it needs to be wired.
correct.
Just trying to help you guys out here because we get so many questions about that.
Yes.
I know it sounds kind of redundant to get questions about the order form when people have to select a drop-down box to order a tune from us that says, I will fill out the order form I will fill out the order form in the description below this product. And then they call us and say, hey, I haven't gotten a tune.
Did you fill out the form?
Did you fill out the form? Well, no, I didn't see it. You had to check a box that says you acknowledge you see it.
Then our favorite, the cats.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey, so
I'm getting these codes. Can you guys turn these off? No.
what do you mean you can't turn these codes off? Remember that
Dude.
giant, huge bold letter disclaimer that you clicked, yes, I understand?
Yeah, but we're making videos for you guys to try and help you guys out with understanding stuff. The key to those videos helping you is you watching them. So if you can, please go over to the VMP YouTube when you get bored,
Yes.
or you're not bored and you just actively want to go
Share
learn
them.
something.
Share them to your friends so that if you
Everybody
help,
can learn.
if you help one person,
I feel like
For
the
one view a day,
yes, for one,
you can save it.
exactly.
I feel like
For one view a day, you can
I
help.
feel like
save
there
it.
should be puppies on the screen right now, and like the sad Sarah McLachlan song should be playing.
Yes. For one view a day, you too can help save a tuner from beating his head against the wall.
Exactly.
And then Chuck Harder, carb swap your 87 hatch. Joey feels personally attacked. He should.
Exactly.
If there was somebody here,
There's your puppies. There's puppies on the screen.
there you go.
Okay,
See,
there we
okay.
go.
Let's just throw Joey under the bus. If there was an employee at VMP that was going to drive a carbureted small block Fox body, it's going
Joey.
to be Joey.
It is 100% Joey.
And you know damn well it's going to have a plate kit on it
Yep.
with a
Fed with 3/8 fuel injection
right,
hose.
and he's going to have a 50-pound mother bottle in a trunk,
Yep.
and he's going to spray it. It's probably going to have. It's going to either have a T5
Mm-hmm.
that he somehow hasn't managed to break, or it's going to have a C4 in it, because he's not going to put anything good in it. It's going to have a C4 in it,
Yep.
and he's going to be out. He's going to be out on them streets.
That's Joey.
That's
For those
Joey.
that don't know Joey. Brian, you got your question ready?
Yes, you got that question of the day,
Brian's
son?
non-car guy question of the day. Bum, bum, bum,
He
bum.
usually drops some of the best questions
He
on us
does.
too.
He's good. He's good.
I just like because Casati made such a big deal about it
Mm-hmm.
when we were making the video, or like after the fact, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I just wondered like why, not like what the use is,
Mm-hmm.
but why is it called a wideband and why is one called wide and one called narrow?
There
Okay,
it is.
let's
See,
go.
he always drops some questions, man.
Okay.
That's
so,
a good
so
question.
for those that couldn't hear, Brian's question is, why is a wideband sensor called a wideband and a narrowband called a narrowband? Okay,
I got this.
I give you the floor.
All right. shuffled cards. Okay, a wideband is called a wideband because it
Hear 'em out.
Hear me out. It reads over a wide band, meaning usually Brian educating me. Where did it
So
cut
do you know
off
where
at?
it lost us?
I have no idea. I just got a random.
So it looks like you're on
I was
the
on a
beginning of
tangent.
a rant.
Yeah, because I was
Okay,
doing
so
this.
We'll just hit reset.
Are we
Oh,
back?
okay.
Okay, so I don't know where that cut off, so now I got to do this all over again.
Okay. Fire away.
A wide band.
There you are.
Yes, okay. A wide band is called a wideband because it reads over a wide range of air-fuel ratios.
Yep.
Depending on the sensor, it will read from 10 to 1 all the way to 18 to 1. Some of them will read from 8 to 1 all the way to 20 to 1. So it reads a wide range. A narrow band will only read over a narrow range, basically stoic point of the fuel. So it'll only read about 10 lambda. And it ranges from 0 to 1 volt versus a wideband will read from 0 to 5 volts.
And
So
the other layer to that onion is
Yes.
that a wideband can be expected to output a relatively linear function
correct.
for what air-fuel ratio is here versus what air-fuel ratio is here. Whereas kind of like how you
A
alluded
narrow band
to-
is like a sine wave kind of.
Yeah, it's weird. A narrow band is like you get to like 13.5 and it reads pretty close to the same value from 13.5 all the way to 10.0.
Yes.
And then you get to
15.0.
yeah, you get to 15.0 just outside of stoic, and it basically reads what we refer to as like dead lean or like sub 0.3, 0.4
Correct.
volts all the way to like 19 to 1.
So running with that a little bit more, Brian, when we are tuning a car, we're driving around. We'll use lambda because we'll keep it simple. You're driving around at 1.10 lambda.
Plus or minus 2%.
Yeah,
usually.
so we're driving around at 1.0 lambda, and we need it, when we go wide open throttle, we want it at 0.8 lambda. A narrow band is not capable of reading that low.
Yeah, and that's not to say
So-
it's not going to output something at that, because it still outputs something.
It's just not accurate.
But you can't tell if that value it's spitting out is 0.8 lambda or 0.85 lambda or 0.7 lambda. All you know is that it's richer than about 13.5, and that's
I got it.
And
So-
depending on how much heat's in the sensor, it'll change how much it outputs.
I got it.
to.
So think of it as octaves. A narrow band is 1 octave,
Okay.
and a wide band is the whole damn keyboard.
Oh.
How you like that?
Complete sense.
See?
Yeah.
Wow.
See, narrow band works, but it only works here.
You get we'll call it 3 keys. You're either on stoic, rich, or lean.
Correct.
You only get 3 different tones, and then
Right.
the wideband's like you got the whole keyboard right there.
So you can't. The song that you're trying to play is obviously down here in the lower octaves, but the sensor doesn't read that low.
Yeah,
So
you're just
you
hearing
need-
the same tone.
So you need a wide band.
Follow-up question.
Okay.
Okay.
So so just and I take this out of my ear because you're yapping in my ear too. All right. So just like a guitar, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like a guitar, right? Technically, the guitar is only in technically 2 octaves.
Right.
Depending,
Right.
where you're tuned and all this.
Right.
Okay. So 1 or 2, possibly 3 octaves, right?
Right.
So is there a way to? But now with the guitar, you can tune it and move it up and down the scale of different. So
Correct.
if I'm in this octave, I could move 3 up by tuning it up a few steps.
Correct.
So, can you do the same thing with your stuff?
No.
No.
Yeah.
It's
No.
just
A narrow band just reads.
Just this. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why we can't really use them because.
Like we can use them for tuning idle part throttle cruise as long as it's able to switch around stoic. If a car has an issue where like it's open loop, which means the O2 sensors and the closed loop fueling on the car isn't trying to control fueling to achieve stoic. It's just kind of, hey, here's the fuel you requested. I don't know what it's doing, and your O2 voltage is like 0.8. If it's in that range, we can't really do anything with it aside from start chopping fueling until it brings O2 voltage where we want it. But if there's
Yeah.
an issue with your O2 sensor that's causing it to read that voltage, then we're stuck. But the other end of the spectrum is wide open throttle is usually the most important thing that we need wide bands for. The narrow bands deal with handling stoic very well. That's why they're in everything from the factories, because the most important thing from an emission standpoint to the manufacturer is maintaining stoic or plus or minus 2% of stoic under 99% of conditions. The wide open
Correct.
throttle stuff, a lot of manufacturers just use what we refer to as open loop, because wide open throttle is technically off trace for most emissions tests, and as long as it's within like 5% or so of what they deem adequate fueling, then it's probably going to be okay. But when we're tuning stuff to make sure your stuff's safe at 15 pounds of boost on a stock engine on pump gas, we need to know what air fuel is or what lambda is at wide open throttle
At all times.
so we can make sure
basically.
everything's set up properly.
See.
Yeah.
Well, now we're not talking about music songs.
You'll get it.
Think
You'll
of it,
look back
think
on
of
this
it-
video in 3 years
think
and be
of
like,
it-
I got it.
So think of it as, so I got it. Think of it as you're playing a song.
Yeah.
So you playing the song is the car running and driving and going watt. Okay, the car is playing the whole song.
Yeah.
If you have a narrow band, the microphone only picks up 1,000 hertz to 2,000 hertz, and that's it.
I got you.
So the song's still playing down here, but you can't hear it.
Yeah.
So you can't make any changes because you can't see what that's doing. The wideband is going to record all of it, so then you have all of this data to adjust accordingly. See, I speak Brian.
All right, so we're going to kill the last few questions, and we're going to get out of here. Zachary Cordry.
Yes.
It's a full bolt-on. It's full FBO right now. Just put my first can in. 2020 Mustang GT, VMP tuned already. Didn't know if I should get a revision for the Boostain. Reach out to us. We can get you a revision for Boostain, and we'll look at some data logs to confirm it's adding the timing in and it's not getting false knock or anything like that. M. Jaron 88. Any word on Odin supercharger for Cobra Terminators? Not happening, brother.
You'll know before we will.
Yeah. Well, Odin is something that we already make for 5-liter
Correct.
Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3. As far as Cobra goes,
I don't think it'll fit.
it won't fit. The distance between the cylinder head mounting flanges is much narrower on a Cobra than it is a 5.4 or a 5-liter.
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen, but I would argue that it's more likely that we would make an Odin for a GT500 before we ever made one for a Terminator.
Correct.
And like I said, don't ask us about this. It's not going to happen. But from a fitment standpoint, it logistically makes more sense on a GT500 than it does a Cobra.
Correct. Dion Forbes, Matthew Kazadi with the Strong Arm. What's up, buddy?
What's up?
He's a good dude.
Guy's an asshole. Brandon T. Cormier, thanks. And Matt Olette. Okay, great guys. If I switch to Boostain, how well will it keep? I don't drive much. I don't want to lose its potency.
It does
and
not.
tank from sitting. So that's the one good thing about Boostain as opposed to Torco and some of the other octane boosters in there. It stays in solution a lot better, both with itself and with the fuel you're mixing it into than some of the other octane boosters that are out there. You'll see, like if you pour some of the other ones into a glass container, you get a lot of sediment at the bottom or precipitate, and it's going to eventually do the same thing in your gas tank after it's been sitting for a long time. And that's where we kind of made the move more towards Boostain, just because it stays in solution quite a bit better.
Victor Xavier, good afternoon, Matt and Joe. Do you have any experience with the front BMR K-member on an S187 for street driving? No problems whatsoever.
Yeah, I haven't seen any issues with it.
I had one.
Justin
I've had one.
it.
I had one of the first ones they made.
I think Justin had to have been pretty close to that in his Boss 302.
Never had a problem. There's no additional noise, anything like that. No problem whatsoever. And you have a hell of a lot more room to work on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So can't go wrong with that one.
We got Larry Duran. Can we turn that blue vert up some more? I mean, we probably could, but you know, being that it's your car, I don't know, man. I feel like you got to drive it the way it is right now. People get so focused and wrapped up in dyno numbers. It's like, dude, the car is stupid the way that it is right now. Go drive it.
I've had
Take it back.
I've had
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
I've had at least 3 customers back when I had the shop. I had at least 3 customers that I have to have 1,000. Never owned anything faster in life. Wanted 1,000. Wanted 1,000. Wanted 1,000. Built them 1,000 horsepower car. They drove it one time and sold it.
And Larry had a 1,000 horsepower car before he brought it to us for more upgrades and stuff.
Okay, so he might be a little bit different. I'm just saying, I've
But I
had people
think
that have
it's-
literally sold the car because they're like, nah, I'm
Exactly.
good.
While we're on Larry Duran, he just says, "I just want to go skating."
Yeah,
That's about what you're
that's
going to do.
about what
Larry.
it's going to do.
Charismatic. When looking at fuel trims, do you advise looking at average values determined from a data log as compared to looking at the values of short-term and long-term fuel trim gauges on the device? So it depends on when you're looking at them. If you're looking at them under steady state, I don't know. I guess it really doesn't matter if you're looking at it as it's happening or looking at it in a data log. It just matters when you're looking at them, both in the data log or on the device itself. So you want to try and look in steady state, not very rapid transients. Like if you're just whoop-ah, 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 whoop-ah,
Yeah.
just blipping it, the fuel trims in that are basically useless depending on the response time of your O2 sensors. And if you're steady doing, let's just say it's steady idling,
Right.
like you can look at fuel trims there. If you're steady doing 60 going down the road, as long as you don't have some bad MAF noise or anything like that going across the sensor, you're probably okay looking at fuel trims there. If you're looking at a data log at wide open throttle, you're pretty much okay looking at fuel trims there, especially if we're talking a 11-up Coyote that's closed loop at wide open throttle. If it's open loop at wide open throttle like a GT500, you're going to get a very confusing flat signal or relatively flat signal depending on whether or not it has cats or a flat air fuel is commanded.
Root beer. Next myth versus reality. Drilled rotors are good. Well, anything's better than what was on there.
Yeah, I disagree with drilled rotors being better, but I guess it ultimately depends on the quality of the rotor to begin with before it's drilled.
Yeah, these are drilled and slotted, so it doesn't matter, okay?
Ooh, you got slits. Brandon Valdez, I have an 03 Terminator and I'm looking at the VMP fuel pump booster. Do I need to run a power wire from it to the battery? Will it help? So on an 03 Cobra, I wouldn't worry about running a power wire to the battery. If you had like a 9904 GT or a 9901 Cobra, I would say that it wouldn't be a bad idea to run a wire to the battery and run a relay setup. I wouldn't say that it's absolutely
It's not
necessary,
necessarily.
though.
I will say that if you run a 10 gauge wire to the battery, it does get another solid volt,
Yeah.
approximately 1 additional volt to the
Yep.
pump. Take
And
that for what it's
then-
worth.
In some cases, that's like the difference between you being basically out of fuel and buying yourself a little bit of margin.
Correct, yes.
So like if you're on that fuzzy edge, or you know that you're building a setup that's going to be on that fuzzy edge, and it is a 9904 GT or 9901 Cobra or 0304 Mach 1, it's probably not a bad idea to do that. But the Cobras, the 0304 Cobra specifically, is already wired with a thicker gauge wire going back to the FPDM.
Correct.
William Sick, thoughts of the N-Gage going away. It made me very sad.
Yes.
I like using the N-Gages on certain platforms.
Yes.
On other platforms, the SCT stuff makes more sense. But the N-Gage definitely had a place in our hearts and a place in our catalog and a place in areas where we like to use it most. And it being gone makes us sad.
Yes.
Kenneth Platts, any ETA on when Odin kits will be available for 21 F-150s? I do not have an ETA on that. I know that we're probably going to be starting the development process here soon if Justin hasn't already started it behind the scenes. I'm not really on the up and up on that stuff specifically, but we're starting. Should be a faster timeline than what Odin was for 18s,
Yes.
just because we're not waiting on somebody else now. Michael Sharp, I just bought a power pack from you. I have a 2011 Shelby. Do I need a remote tune after I install it? Not necessarily. It depends on which power pack you bought. Most of our power packs come with a tune. And if you're just able to data log the car either on the street or on your own closed course, or you're able to rent a dyno, we can get everything dialed in fairly quickly. It is not necessary to buy a remote tune, but if your expectation is that we are going to drop everything we are doing and we're going to treat your car like we have it in front of us on the dyno, except it's remote, then that's where you buy a remote tune. You schedule a time with us prior to buying the remote tune, and we kind of set aside your tuner, whether it be Matt, Michelle, me, or Mike, and we work with you while you're on the dyno to get everything dialed in the way that it is. But I do suggest trying to at least get us an idle slow rev and a potentially a partial watt hit on the street before you even go to the dyno, so that we can tell you if it looks like we can spy any gremlins or problems with the setup
Right.
before you get out there and you're spending money paying the guy for dyno time and paying us for remote tune. Jaron88. Okay, thanks guys. I forgot what Jaron's question was. Any word on node and supercharger for Cobra Terminators? Yeah, no problem, buddy. Sorry, but the Gen 3R and some of your other options for Cobras seem to fit the marketplace just right.
3100
And
Gen 7. Wait.
And with that, it is 3:09. We ran 9 minutes longer
It's
than I was
okay.
hoping to,
It's
but
okay, we dropped some knowledge on them today.
yeah, we got some questions answered for you guys. We covered E85. We covered some of the videos that we're doing for you guys.
Yes. Brian's wideband question.
Yeah, Brian's wideband versus
Solid
narrowband
question, Brian. Good job.
And
dude.
then we also did the me and Matt's project stuff. And yeah, so like I said in the beginning of the show, this isn't Tuning Tuesday. This isn't Burnout Box. This is just VMP's new live show. We're going to try to do this every Wednesday at 2. If it doesn't happen, don't be mad at us. It's something that we're trying to get back into doing for you guys. We had some requests from people to start doing the show again. You won't always see Matt and me, or Matt and myself, or Matt and I on here. And it could be anyone from Chuck or Joey or Justin and Rebecca.
I want to see
or
a Chuck and
whoever.
Joey show. God, I would watch
It'd be
that.
a good show. But yeah,
I would,
exactly.
I would watch that one.
But Matt and I are going to get back to work tuning cars.
See.
I got some development work to do on a GT500 on the dyno.
I'm sure I have a guy that doesn't know how to use a computer.
Oh, poor Matt.
And because that's our new thing now. Nobody
Yeah.
knows how to use a computer.
But we're going to get back to doing what we do. You guys get back to doing what you do.
See.
Have a good day. Good night. See you next week.
Bye.